ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jerry Maserati of the New York Times.
Good morning. Good morning, and I'm Jerry Maserati. I'm the editorial director of the New York Times conference series. And I'd like to welcome you all to the second annual Next New World Conference, Tom Friedman's conference here in San Francisco. As our circulation people would be happy to tell you, San Francisco is really our second home. And we're thrilled to be here at UCSF's Mission Bay Conference Center and to have the University of California as a sponsor of today's event. I also want to mention and thank HP for being a sponsor of the Next New World. I hope you enjoy today. I hope you engage with the speakers and with Tom. There will be questions, time for questions. So without further ado, let me introduce someone who probably needs no introduction to you, your host, award-winning Times columnist, author, world traveler, and thinker, Thomas Friedman.
Jerry, thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. It's really a treat to have you here to do this conference again for the second time, third time if you include our event in Singapore. I know people have come from all over the country. I hope you'll, during the breaks, take advantage of everyone else is here and introduce yourselves. I've already met so many interesting people just over coffee and breakfast, so thank you very much. The way the day is organized, we're going to be doing both interviews and some panels, but we've added a feature this year, and that's there's microphones up here at the front, and at the end of each session, we're going to invite you to come up. We'll be able to take a couple of questions at the end of each session. So we really want you to be able to engage in this process as well. People have asked me, like, does this conference have a theory behind it? And beyond the title, Next New World, how's my kid going to get a job? And the way I really think of this conference is it's really about what we would be talking about as a country if we were talking about what's really important. This is the conversation we think the country should be having. Because what would we be talking about if we were talking about what's really important? We'd be talking about what's on the lips of everyone I encounter today. How's my kid going to get a job? Or how's my middle-aged mother, father, brother, or sister going to keep theirs? As I go around America, indeed as I go around the world, this is among the biggest questions out there today. Everyone senses that something's up. Something's changed in the world out there. Something hugely driven by technology. That's changing every job, every workplace, every industry, and every institution. But no one is quite explaining it to people, let alone giving them the guidance they need to navigate these really profound changes. And that's what we hope to do here today. By the way, what people are sensing is right. Data released just last week by the Federal Reserve revealed that 44% of young college grads in 2012 were working in jobs that did not require a college degree. That's up from 38% in 2007. Now think about that. That means almost half the college grads, people who have borrowed or used $10,000 in savings, $50,000 in savings, or $250,000 in savings to secure a college degree, are now working in jobs that don't require one. Houston, we have a problem. Now, no doubt a big part of the explanation for this is traceable to the drop-off in demand from the Great Recession in 2008. But I would argue, and it's really been central to all my own thinking, is that the Great Recession really coincided with what I would call a great inflection. a giant inflection in technology that really is impacting the workplace in a profound way. An inflection that I would argue is as big as Gutenberg's invention of the printing press. That's right. I think we've gone through a leap in just the last decade and a half in terms of how information and knowledge is generated and transformed into products and services that is as big as Gutenberg's invention of the printing press, with one difference. Gutenberg played out over 200 years, and this is playing out over 2 decades. I always remind people, someone was alive when Gutenberg invented that printing press. And some monk said to some priest, "Now that is really cool," okay? You mean I don't have to write all this stuff out longhand anymore? We can just stamp it out? Well, you all are alive at a similar inflection point. And I've been plowing this field for a long time, so I'm particularly sensitive to it. Because back in 2004, I wrote a book called The World is Flat, arguing that the world was getting connected. Now, the core thesis of that book was that 4 things had converged right around the year 2000 to really connect the world in a differentiated way. And they were, first, the invention of the PC. Because what the PC allowed was for individuals, for the first time in the history of the world, to author their own content in digital form, in the form of bits and bytes. And once your content, words, data, photos, spreadsheets, video, music, could be authored in digital form, it could suddenly be manipulated in so many more ways and sent so many more places. Second thing that happened to converge with, didn't have to, but it did, was the emergence of this thing called the internet. So suddenly I could not only author my own content in digital form, but I could send it anywhere in the world virtually for free. That then converged with something called workflow software, which allowed me to suddenly collaborate on my content with you on your content wherever we were in the world. And that converged with something called search, which enabled me suddenly to search my content and to search your content in ways that truly enhance collaboration. Now, the simple argument of the world is flat is that those 4 things converged right around the year 2000 to create a platform where more people in more places could compete, connect, and collaborate on more things with greater ease for less money than ever before. Hence, I called the book The World is Flat. Had I been a more honest man, I would have called the book The World is Flattening. Because the truth was there were only about a billion people on that platform back in 2004. But I had a sense, an intuition where this is going, and I think it's been borne out. And the world now is flatter than ever. And if you just think what happened in the last decade, think about those 4 things that I would argue originally flattened the world. And let's think about what happened to them in just the last decade. My ability to author my own content went from the PC to this, connected to the cloud and broadband wireless. So my ability to author content now has gone from the personal computer to the very personal computer, connected to the cloud, from which I can download the most powerful tools in the world for pennies, dimes, and nickels, whether I'm in a village in India or sitting here in San Francisco. My ability to send that information anywhere went from the internet to broadband and wireless. Suddenly I can send it from so many more places to so many more places. My ability to collaborate on that went from workflow software and protocols like HTML and HTTP to crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, Twitter, Facebook. My ability to collaborate on my content is exploded. And my ability to search has gone from Google to big data. So if you just think what happened in the last decade, that's the inflection. My ability as an individual to compete, connect, and collaborate and create on this global platform has exploded. And to me, that's the engine that's driving all of this change. And what it's doing, obviously, we're now seeing all around that question, how's my kid going to get a job? After all, one of the fundamental things it's doing, as one of our guests today, Stephanie Sanford, will talk about from the College Board, is that it's taken that thing that sustained the American middle class for 50 years, that thing called a high-wage, middle-skilled job. Yeah, that was the basis of the American middle class for the 50 years after World War II. High-wage, middle-skilled. And it's completely wiped that out. There is no more anything called a high-wage, middle-skilled job. There's only going to be a high-wage, high-skilled job. And we all are feeling that in the marketplace. Second thing it's done is that it's actually taken every middle-class job and pulled it up. It requires now more skill to do. Pulled it out, more machines, software, robots, people in India and China can now compete for it, and pulled it down. Outsourced it to history, made it obsolete faster than ever. So every middle-class job is being pulled up, out, and down faster than ever. We had a story in the New York Times about 3 weeks ago about dairy farmers in upstate New York who are using robots now to milk their cows. You really got to get your mind around that, okay? You can't almost can't even visualize it, but it actually is true. So if you were a farmhand and working in a dairy in upstate New York for the last 50 years, either milking the cows by hand or working with one of those, more modern milking systems, either way, if you want to still have that job now, the skill you need is either to operate, repair, or write the software for a robot milking cows. I can't think of a more vivid example of how that middle-class job has been pulled up, out, and down. It's happened so fast. As our first speaker, Andy McAfee, is going to talk about, it's incredible how many jobs that we thought humans could only do are now being done by machines, and it's happened so fast. Andy and his co-author, Eric Brynjolfsson, told a story at an event we did earlier this year, really stuck in my mind. I'm 60, so I grew up on the Jetsons and the Flintstones. Andy reminded me, George Jetson flew his own flying saucer. George Jetson never imagined that Google would invent a car that would drive itself. George Jetson had to fly his own flying saucer. So the people who were doing science fiction couldn't imagine what we have here today already. And it's for this reason that another one of our guests, Tony Wagner, is going to talk about why it is not enough anymore to graduate high school, let alone college, but to graduate high school college ready. College ready. You have to graduate innovation ready. And that is a whole different level of skill and require a whole different shift in education. So these are but a few of the challenges that we are going to face today. And the way I've tried to organize this conference, and the way you only wish our national conversation were going, is to talk about the whole supply chain. So the thesis of this conference is that we're going to start by talking about what are the big technological shifts in the world, what kind of new industries is that producing, what kind of new jobs and skills would that require, therefore what kind of post-secondary education do we need, therefore what kind of K-12 education do we need. To me, that's the conversation we need to be having in the country, the whole supply chain. And unfortunately, thank you. Unfortunately, we're having this incredibly siloed conversation. Education over here, skills over here, jobs over here, tech over here. And what we're going to try to do this afternoon is really pull the whole thing together. Because we know something big is happening technologically, but what exactly is it? We know the answer is more and better education, but what does that actually look like in the classroom? We know it'll all require each of us to learn and relearn more often, but how? Am I supposed to go back to college every 4 years? We know that our kids are likely to work in many more jobs than we ever had to, but how does one go about applying and interviewing for a job that was invented last week? I think before the day is over, many of you may come to the same conclusion I have. And this is truly the subtext of this conversation. I think we need a whole new social contract, a whole new public-private partnership for this next new world. Because more will be on you. That is really the one thing that this new world has in common. More will be on you. I've been saying for a while now, if the world had a meter on it, okay, for the last 50 years, the dial was set to the left. And the closer you were to the Soviet Union, the more to the left the dial was set. And what that dial pointed to, it said, you live in a world of defined benefits. Do your job every day, show up to work, even be average. And these are the benefits you will get. What's happened because of this inflection, this incredible shift over the last 10 years, is that dial has not just moved, it's whipped. And it's whipped over here, and it says you live in a world of defined contributions. Your returns now, as an employer or an employee, will be more directly correlated than ever to your specific contribution. We now live in a 401k world. We live in a 401k world where everyone will have to pass the bar and everyone will face the most email list. What do I mean by that? Well, two of our speakers this afternoon, Nick Sedlett and Ellie Sharaf, they're going to talk about their company, Higher Art, which is all about testing people for any job now. You see, the legal profession, for whatever reason, 100 years ago, decided that your law degree was not a proxy for your ability to actually do this job. So they said, we're going to have a bar exam. You can go to law school, but before we actually let you practice law, we're going to have a bar exam. I think the bar exam, or some version of it, is coming to every job because no employer anymore wants to take a chance. No one cares what you know anymore. The Google machine knows everything. All anyone will pay you for is what you can do with what you know. And more employers are going to test for that. I said, though, we live in a 401k world where everyone has to pass the bar and everyone faces the most emailed machine. We on NewYorkTimes.com, if you go there in the bottom right hand of the homepage, you'll see the most emailed items in the New York Times in the last 24 hours, updated every 15 minutes. Any New York Times reporter or columnist who tells you they don't look at that list is a liar, okay? I can assure you. How can you not? How did my column do? How did my story do? Am I on the list? Am I number 5, number 1, number 20? All of that is really just a big data play. We're using big data to track what our readers are reading. That big data play is coming to every job. Last conference, I talked about Jamba Juice on 53rd and Lexington in New York. Jamba Juice now has software plugged into the Weather Channel. They track every degree up and down in weather, and they know from big data exactly how much juice they sell at 72 degrees, 73 degrees, and 74 degrees at Jamba Juice at 53rd and Lexington. And they divide their workday up now into 15-minute increments, and they add employees by 15 minutes depending on which way the temperature is going. And the employees that get the extra 15 minutes are those who sell more Jamba Juice on their shift. There is now school software widely available that can track, if you're a third-grade teacher, how many of your kids are in third-grade reading or math level every week and every day, and parents can view it on one side, and teachers can view it on the other. So we're going into a world where it's a 401k world where everyone will have to pass a bar exam of sorts, and everyone's going to face their own email list. Now, you know from watching late-night TV, there's 20 people out there who'd be very happy to tell you how to invest your 401k. But how many people are telling you how to invest in yourself in a world where more is going to be on you. And I believe the new social contract, someone mentioned as I was just having coffee this morning, a digital social contract, a social contract for the digital age, is really going to be about what we have to do and what government can do to help us all invest in ourselves in this hyper-connected world where more is going to be on you. So that's really the method to my madness here, the theme of this conference, and I can't think of any better way to begin it than with my friend Andy McAfee, who, with Eric Brynjolfsson, has written a superb book. If you have not read it, order it on Amazon this afternoon, The Second Machine Age. Andy, thank you.